Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. Today I thought I would do a comparison video for you looking at the demo project of a song versus the original mixed and mastered version. So in this case, we're going to be looking at my new track Famine from the Cult of the Lamb Hymns of the Unholy EP. We're going to take a look at the whole demo project, look at how it was when I made that demo and sent it out to the artists to work on and write their own parts versus what I ended up with. Let's do it. So this is the demo project that I've got here in front of me. You'll see with my markers here, I've got it set up in two sections. So Eligos and Hecate. Those are the names of the two tracks from the OST, from Riverboy's OST, that make up the structure of this song, Famine. There are a number of tracks in this project that are original stems from the OST. So I'm going to put them all together, which are these E drums and this bass, leads, chords, choir, vox. All of those bits are original stems from the OST that I've still got in the project at this stage. And then these stacks up above, up here, are the additional things that I have written. Now, some things to note. Obviously, you can see already from this structure here that these tracks are hacked about quite a lot. So there are lots of things that are either cut down or removed entirely. Let's just bring all of those things on screen. So you can see there are big spaces in lots of these tracks and lots of edit points and cuts and chops. So, I'm not just using the things that are in the OST and chucking them in this song. I'm hacking them about to make a new arrangement. Although the structure is the same, I'm being selective about what I want to use and what I don't. The bits that have ended up here are the bits that are working in cooperation with the new content that I'm adding to it. But later on, when we get into the full mix, this stuff will be less again, because as the additional artists, in this case, Scott LePage and Howard Jones, put their parts in, these things adapted once more in order to fit the new arrangement parts. Let me talk you through the instruments that I'm using in this demo in order to make my own tracks. So for the drums, I'm using P5 from GGD. They sound like this. Just using the Wildfire full turbo preset, which is going into some virtual mix rack for some parallel compression, and then into a limiter just to limit it. So very simple processing on this drum kit sound, very easy to set up and get working with straight away, which is when you're writing and arranging what you need. You don't want to be worrying too much about having to mix things to get the sound that you're hearing in your head. Bass guitar wise, I've got two channels going on. So I've got a dirty amp channel, which is basically the track that I recorded onto, and that has got my chain on it with some compression and gating, with the actual sort of distortion amp sim, and then the IR, the cab sim. That channel on its own sounds like this. Pretty dirty. And then that exact same signal, that DI signal, is being copied over onto a second channel, which then has a room, an IR room on it as well, to give me a bit more space. So that's just making it sound like a bass guitar in a room, and those two things together. With the drums. Okay, then on guitar, I just got a rhythm guitar stack going on. So I've got two guitar parts, one panned left and one panned right, and they are using two different amp sounds per part. So on the left side, I've got a Marshall sound and a sound from Gojira together. And the same on the right, but with a second recording. then later on, I just add in some additional guitars. I guess I just kind of exploded out the guitar part here. So let's listen to the bottom half. So that's kind of more power chordy. I guess this is sitting on top of that. Yeah, okay. And that with the drums and bass. Cool, okay. So that's what I'm doing with drums, bass, and rhythm guitar. And then I've got a bunch of sound design stuff, mostly samples and little risers and effects and things. Little impacts and stuff. There's some kind of impacts and little glitchy things. You'll see that when I'm doing my sound design for a song, not every sample is different. Not every effect that I'm using is different. I like to kind of select a palette for a song and maybe use it 2 or 3 times. So this short little riser here, I use that little swell 3 times. I use that little chatterbox style impact 4 times. This longer riser is 3 times, 2 on this, 4 on this. So I'm not just throwing millions and millions of different effects and sound design elements. I've got a palette of things that I'm using. So let's take a look structurally then. You will see that the song basically begins just with elements from the OST from Elagos. The reason that I wanted to do that is because when I was hearing the arrangement in my head, I wanted the drums to come in at that point with a kind of with an impact, and I wanted there to be space for the guitarist and the vocalist to do something kind of quirky in this initial part. So to me, hearing that, I was hearing this kind of half-time style groove, which is what I dropped in when the drums come in at measure 12 or at here. And I love that interplay between the acoustic drum kit and the timpani that River Boy's got going on here. So I wanted to make a bit more of a feature of that. Then I felt this kind of swell and this drop going into a fairly standard chuggy kind of metalcore-y thing that goes on here. Oh yeah, here's a nice little guitar part that I added at that point. I felt it just needed something else to lift. Just Gojira from Neural DSP and a Valhalla delay going on there. So pretty standard kind of chuggy metalcore-y thing, leaving lots and lots of space. It was important that when I made these arrangements, there was space for the artists that were going to contribute on top of this to, to do their own thing with it. If I'd given them a really complex, fully fleshed out arrangement already, they wouldn't feel like there was much space for them to contribute, and that was important. little chokes, little subtle touches in the arrangement. And then Eligos ends at this point. There's this big swell and goes into something different. Now, at this point in Hecate, I wanted it to feel much, much heavier. So that's what I was going for. Much more of a metalcore-y kind of thing there, with little lead interjections in between stabby stuff, and it goes from the half time into kind of regular time. And then I wanted a really kind of driving, anthemic ending to this track. So it kind of picks up and goes to this snare on all the downbeats thing going on. So that's where we ended up. So, there's an arrangement there. It's definitely based on these tracks, Eligos and Hecate from Riverboy's OST, but there's room for the additional artists to contribute. So that's what the artists got, broken down into a series of stems. Let's pull up the final mixed version and let's see what we ended up with. Okay, so here's the final mixed version. You can see, in terms of layout, it's pretty similar. Structurally, most things are in a similar kind of place. So let's just drop it from the beginning and see what differences we notice. So here's the first cool thing that Scott did. He's given me these really cool guitars. Now, he gave me just his stuff in 2 tracks. So he gave me a stereo lead guitar channel and then a stereo rhythm channel. So, that gave me a really clearly defined kind of idea of what he was thinking about. And then I had to work from that to mix those things into the session. So that's what he gave me at the beginning. Which is really cool. Other than that, these additional things, they're as they were in the demo, they're from the OST. Now, the drop comes in at the same time. Let's listen to Mike's drums. So we've got these additional, these really grunty guitars down here from Scott, really low, with his additional almost synthy lead stuff going on top. Mike's drums, very similar vibe, but, in his own kind of style. And then halfway here, this is where I had my additional guitar line coming in. What is this? Yeah, so that same line is retained. I've put on the additional delay, so I've got like delay into a delay, so it's sounding, really kind of washed out. But this part now is very much playing second fiddle to Scott's line there, which is, a cooler line, and that's taken precedent over this part that's underneath it. It's at this point as well, obviously, that here with the drums, that Howard's vocal comes in. So let's take a look at that. Now, he sent it to me as a vocoder track. It was already kind of processed, so he made it very clear to me how he wanted it to sound.
No evil as we bind the chains. Cut my throat, bloody rags hide the pain.
Some additional processing on it from me, but, you know, it came to me. This is the dry signal.
No evil as we bind the chains.
You know, as a vocoder channel. So that's what we got. And if we put that with Scott's guitar there.
No evil as we bind the chains. Cut my throat, bloody rags hide the pain.
We get this kind of polyrhythm thing going on where the guitar and drums are locked in on one rhythm. You know, quite a mathy, obscure rhythm there. And then the vocal line has got much more of a natural lilt to it, where it's going in this kind of groups of threes thing.
No evil as we bind the chains. Cut my throat, bloody rags hide the pain. Each and every vessel is.
So those things are really cool. And then when it kind of drops in a little bit more, so it's starting to build, we get this proper kind of vocal hook that comes from Howard. Let's hear that.
The one you said can help you now. You say my kid, I can't allow. You will suffer to this I know.
So proper vocal line. You'll notice there's no bass guitar up to this point. It's all synth bass because the synth bass is so thick. It's got that big kind of sawtooth thing going on it.
Can't help you now.
You know, sidechain sawtoothy thing. So I didn't want to detract from that by putting on an additional instrument. So there's still no bass guitar. Then we get to the kind of chuggy bit, and this is where the bass comes in. Now let's hear all the guitars at that point. So Scott is, with his rhythm track, picking out the same rhythms that I was already doing. So they end up kind of doubled, which is cool. And then this really wild, kind of noisy lead line. So Howard gave me this hook one time round, this Famine and Pestilence hook, and then I wanted to do something different with it the second time, so I did all this kind of glitchy, funky effect stuff.
Famine and pestilence will be your punishment.
That second time round, we've got all these effects. Let's just hear those in isolation.
Famine and pestilence will be your punishment. And now you're in a place from which you can't rest.
So some kind of glitchy stuff going on there. And then we get the swell going from Eligos into Hecate. Now, this is the point where Scott kind of really goes to town. So where I went to kind of a basic metalcore-y thing, you know, there was plenty of room for him to interpret that in his own way, and he gave me this kind of monstrous riff here. You know, so just this brutal, really dissonant, chromatic riff in the low end, which obviously I had to adapt the bass guitar to and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, that, if we just hear Scott's guitars with Howard's screams at that point.
Make your peace, you will not leave the stumble. Make your peace,
you know, just massive, brutal, really monstrous, which is obviously a lot cooler than the basic metalcore thing than I had in the demo. The second half, where it goes from like a half-time feel to the regular time feel. Let's just hear the drums transition there. You know, so loads of sound design things going on there, really over the top reverbs on the snare. And again, with the vocals, I've kind of taken the first half of what Howard did and then done some kind of abstract, choppy stuff on the second half. Let's just hear those vocals just on their own. So, you know, really just messing around a lot. You can see there were other ideas in there that I had as well that didn't end up in there. So, you know, trying to be cool with it, but a bit sparing. And obviously that's made this drop here, you know, altogether a really, really heavy, brutal thing, which I absolutely love. Then we get to this driving outro, which is where I went to that kind of snare on all the downbeats thing. So at this point, I'm using Scott's lead line here, and I'm sticking with the rhythm that I got because I really like the space in between it. So let's hear those things. So really cool lead lines from Scott there, and the vocals on top. You know, Howard's given this amazing big anthemic hook.
I underestimated the strength of your resolve, condemned to join the flock.
You know, just such a typical awesome Howard Jones hook. And I wanted to see if I could heighten that even more. So I jumped in my vocal booth and just recorded loads and loads and loads of layers of vocals in different styles and screams, and then just bounced it all down to this stereo track, which you can hardly hear in the mix, but it's just a thickening kind of thing.
I underestimated the strength of your resolve.
Condemned to join the flock and follow, and live all my days in sorrow.
You know, in the context of the mix, you barely even know that that's there, but it just has this thickening effect on the repetition at this point. You know, let's hear the mix at that point without Howard's vocals and, you know, see how subtle that is. You know, so it's there, but it's subtle. So those are the main differences between demo and finished mix. The big contributions are the holes that Scott has filled with his, you know, awesome stylized guitars, you know, really bringing an additional style and character to this song that it needed. Obviously, the contribution of Mike's drums and his hard hitting and impact that sound a hell of a lot better than the MIDI drums that I had going on, and then Howard's vocals. But, you know, from demo to song, the arrangements are the same, the structure is the same. It's the contributions of those additional musicians and then how I've blended those into the mix that really have made the difference here. So I hope that's a kind of cool insight into this track and into the process of going from demo to finished song. If you haven't checked out the EP already, it's out. Link in the description. Just go and search for Hymns of the Unholy on your favorite digital streaming platform. I'll be back for you very soon with another video. Thanks so much.